Hi guys, and welcome to our first video in the series on understanding the building blocks of database management systems. So in this video we're going to try and answer three questions. What exactly is a database management system? Why do organizations really need them? And how exactly are they different from spreadsheets? The first thing we need to understand is that the most precious resource of any organization is its data. This is because you cannot actually replace the data if you lose it. You cannot just go out and buy some new data. You cannot function without it in an organization. And of course, if the organization has good data, then it can actually give it a competitive advantage. This is why almost every organizational information system out there relies on this data. It needs to store it in a persistent way and to be able to access it. So now let's look at some of the features that a database management system or a DBMS needs to offer to an organization. The first really important feature is durability. In other words, if the hardware crashes, if the electricity goes off, if, let's say, the building burns down, heaven forbid, we need to be able to recover the data. It needs to be stored in a durable fashion. The next feature that a DBMS needs to offer is something called concurrency, which basically means allowing many people, hundreds of people or thousands of people to concurrently access the data. In other words, to access the database at the same time. Because if you think about how an organization works, there is one big database, let's say, that is being accessed by many different people. They could be employees, they could be customers that go in and make small changes to the database. For example, a customer might be logging in to update their information, or somebody might be entering an order. So think about this vast database, but you want to allow many people and many programs to access this data at the same time. The next feature that we want a DBMS to offer is consistency. Now there's two different kinds of consistency. The first is the consistency that shows the correct picture of the organization at any given point in time. In other words, the business rules that the organization is following out in the real world should also be reflected internally within the database. The next type of consistency is process consistency, so that, let's say, for example, in a bank, if money is moved between accounts, we want the balance of money to be the same before and after the transaction. The next feature that we want a DBMS to offer is fairly obvious. We want it to be able to store large amounts of data and to be able to retrieve it quickly. Now, if you're going to store large amounts of data, we need to store it in secondary storage or hard disks. We cannot just store everything in the main memory. Now, as you probably know, accessing information on the hard disk is a lot slower than accessing it in random access memory or main memory. So many clever strategies have been devised over the last few decades in order to minimize the time it takes to retrieve information from secondary storage. Another question for you to think about is, how do we store multimedia data as opposed to alphanumeric data? One question that's often asked by beginners is, how are DBMSs different from spreadsheets? Because they kind of offer the same interface. Now, spreadsheets, to begin with, store all the data in main memory, and we looked at some of the features that we want DBMSs to offer, and actually spreadsheets offer almost none of these features. And if they do, they offer it in a fairly limited fashion. So they're not really substitutes for DBMSs. Of course, spreadsheets are a killer app, and they're really helpful for analysis of data in sheets, but DBMSs serve a completely different function than spreadsheets. So what do we learn from all this? We learn that data is the most precious resource of an organization, and it needs to invest in making sure it is stored robustly and accessed efficiently. It also needs to provide a consistent view of the organization, and it needs to be accessed by many people at the same time. Spreadsheets do not allow this kind of functionality. Let's go to a fun activity. So think about, let's say you want to start a coffee shop in your local area. Do you need a database management system for this, or can you just get by with a spreadsheet? What kind of data do you think you would need to store for this business?